and linking them
To download the app, and I can't get.
from Facebook to the web. It's a trick of a vid. Some are just worth done by hand is the best technology. Have the sign with a big turtle that is kid friendly. It says slow kids. And then you can have a giant possum dead with its guts spilling out sitting right in front of that sign. It's counterintuitive to the sign saying precaution, whereas there's this giant hazard right next to it. So it's almost as if the whole situation is a mock of any sort of continuity. The fact that a photon has value is remarkable, but something even better than that is the most simple construct that benefits from it: algae. And so that's why you can't put under the radar how significant an electromagnetic spectrum is in constraints with spectroscopy, because it uses the constraint in order to obtain the simplest transfer known in nature. But what if there was bad algae? I heard just the other day that there's blue algae and it's toxic to the fish, and then we're actually like bigger than fish, so it's not fatal to us. But that's just an animal trial that is different because we're not all entirely but in any case, the blue algae in a water cycle would ostensibly be one in the airwaves, no different than a certain archetype of an emission. The worst type of emission, someone would believe that would be greenhouse. And lo and behold, they're probably right, because the difference between a greenhouse and a perfect black body is a schematic, nothing short of a spectrum that could be registered. It isn't, because no one's trying to find the actual shape of it, because that would be used as an envelope and then eradicated by something like an Air Force. So as corny as this sounds, this is the best that we've got. The conceptualization of the upside down world, or completely reversed universe, is an anti-universe. So everything has an anti-particle. Why would photons be left out? A photon's anti-partner would be from the anti-realm's anti-photons. Electromagnetic spectrum, one of which is an entire electromagnetic spectrum, could all ostensibly be hidden behind just one photon, because at the speed of light, that's how quickly it could collapse. In reverse, it would be doing the same, but for an entire electromagnetic spectrum behind one photon would be nothing short of what it already is. The entire electromagnetic spectrum is an infinity on itself. What does an infinity on itself look like? A wave function collapsing into a particle, but specifically one that has no mass, which would be a photon. The photon doesn't have any mass because it would have ostensibly an entire latency of whatever a singularity would be weighed as. And why is that infinity? Well, simply because it lacks non-symmetry. The only reason space-time's curvature weighs anything is because none of it matches. There's nothing that weighs the exact same. That's the uncertainty principle which is, again, what the wave function is defined as. And so suggesting that the photon is flat is just as though the curved space-time, it doesn't apply to it, so its depth is met by the end of it all, the maximum entropy. You know, everything is just orbiting each other, and then it just slowly spoils out. And then when that occurs, it's as if there were two capacitance plates on either end, one of them being a particle, the other one diffracting as the wave until it gets maximum entropy where they both meet. And why I think that would happen as a diagonal is probably because the orchestrator from the Big Bang to the end where the perfect black body is ostensibly made is something where inside the photon would be going vertical if it had a diagonal in it. That vertical would be encumbering of all the curvature of space-time, given the maximum latency of everything would be the maximum entropy of everything between. I was creeping towards a red light, and so my wheels slightly went over a small snake or a giant worm. They both glisten the same. The only difference is the scale is diamond and rings are circular, depicting the two animals. One of a different breed is that a genome is coding, and when it's inside of an envelope, that's a horse of a different color. Or an alien to the human species is a viral threat, one that Space Force needs a computer division to engage that battle, just as Air Force should be combating greenhouse gas daily, and we should be able to have an app to check on their progress. All these obstacles, they're so obvious, and all you plain Jane's gonna need some options to gain advance. Only difference is some dividends that make sense on the finer things. I mean, because it's rather simple. They don't know what the Big Bang was. They don't know the gravity on the small lengths, the quantum gravity. And so reinventing a Bluetooth so that a battery could capitalize off the missing hotspots in a Wi-Fi is the direct aim, and not to put all the eggs in one basket, so that, you know, the two birds with one stone is utilized with a dual particle, wave particle duality, just as easy as an anti-universe and a multi-universe are constants to how time persists. It's like, I know I'm not gonna stop trying to innovate the best possible way of understanding things that are complex, because those are what's being used against people in order to sell themselves out to box stores ran by fat cats. And so the problem here is that no one knows anything better than what's the common practice, and even some people who try get shut down at the front door. Meaning, if you're not on the same page, all bets are off the table. Everything's thrown out of the window if you're not going to continue on the different path. And so when you're entering a road that has bumps, if you don't know how to full throttle and use them to an advantage, where each bump is a compensation of just a new calibration for the axle to have better handles. Where the name of the game, if you ever brake in driving, that's a sign that to everyone that you don't know how to drive correctly. And this is what makes people have road rage, and it's what triggers police to think also that they need to flip on their lights the more that you brake unnecessarily. So when there's bumps in the road, if you utilize them correctly and driving, you can actually, instead of braking, capitalize off them.